tab in the configuration population spreadsheet that is optional but recommended to think about is the locations tab. This is where you can lay out even a hierarchy of locations on how they can roll up. And locations can be associated to projects, they can be associated to individual issues that you're having that might be only impacting a certain geography. They can be associated within programs, they can be associated to individual people. So there's a lot of touch points with location because you might want to search for someone with a particular role in that location, for example, versus another location. Um, or search for projects that impact certain locations or activities that impact certain locations within given dates so you can see everything going on. So these are all just some general use cases around location. Now let me show you how to configure it in the workbook, and then I'll show you again some of the places where it touches the application. So here are the locations in the spreadsheet that we've got configured in the sample data, and notice how there's a location. These are different locations, and then there's a parent location. So what you can do is first list out all the locations and then associate parent and child relationships. So in other words, let's see here, an easy one. London is in Europe, so the parent is Europe, right? And in Europe, the parent is world areas. And world areas, there is no parent. It's at the very top. So this is the kind of hierarchy you can build. Now, if that's too much, you can always just have it where it's a flat list. You don't have to build out the hierarchy, but we recommend it for some of our clients who are very geographically dispersed, if you will. So now let's go see how that touches the Workotter application and the features that are impacted by that. So as with all these videos, we're headed off to the admin section, right? And you can always search for locations, which is here, and we click on it. And so once you upload it, you'll have the information you saw in the spreadsheet with a little more information. Now, not all of our clients configure all of these things, right? So if you wish to, you're more than welcome to kind of break it down. The only reason you might do so is if you have some sophisticated reporting needs. But once you upload it, you can add this additional metadata if you wish to. Okay, so that's where the configuration lives once you've uploaded it. And now let's look at a couple places where locations touch. Well, we've already talked about people, and that's an obvious one, right? So if I go to the place where all the people are stored and we go to update one, sure enough, I can tag a location for that person, right? So that's like one example of that. Another thing you can do is, as before, go to the user-defined fields and click here where we can now go and type location. Now it's not activated. Notice how the location field scope says project/request. What does that mean? What that means is when you start a request and it eventually becomes a project, we're going to copy over the location. You won't have to re-enter it as a request transforms into a project. But to see this or to activate it, you could just, like before, grid edit, set the different things here as you normally would, right? And then once you save this, now it's activated. And so if we go to create a new request, sure enough, as soon as I've activated that, there is a place we can track location. Now notice how it's a multi-select, right? Sometimes a request touches or impacts multiple locations. So you can hold the control key down and add them. Or if you've made a mistake, you can send it back. So this is how you would configure the location. Now, when this becomes a project, we're going to maintain the same locations as it becomes a project. But these are just a few of the places where locations are prominently featured in Workotter. You can also associate a location within your project plans. So here's a deliverable that I can click on. This brings up the many common features, but if you have an uncommon feature like location, you'll find it here in the advanced edit option. And here's where I can say, well, this deliverable only occurs within a certain location. So these are just different ways you can associate locations to deliverables, issues, risks, changes, anything you need to. And then of course that's a That's an important way to report out if locations are important to you. Last but certainly not least, you can also associate locations to generic roles. So there might be a team of people that share the same role or skill set, but you want to be able to have them defined within a certain location. It's not uncommon to have a group of people that do the same thing in multiple geographies if you're a large organization. So how do we do that? How do we know which resource manager to approach with a request, with an ask request in Workotter? Well, that's done through the role and proficiency pairing. So when you see a role and proficiency pairing, notice how there's a location here. So these differentiate the pools of resources from different geographies. If you leave it blank, that means you don't really care, or it's not an important attribute for you, right? But how that then becomes part of Workotter is if I go to a project now, here's a project, and we go to add somebody or a generic role using that little plus that you've seen maybe before. Notice how one of the drop downs is location. So I could say, show me all of the people or groups of people in London. So this team is in London, and these 3 people are in London. So it just gives you another way to help with your staffing in Workotter. So it's a powerful feature for those that need it, and it has wide range of impacts on the application. So hopefully this helps you configure locations in Workotter.